Hello everybody and welcome to Fukami's presentation about testing and exploiting Flash applications. The talk will be a bit lengthy, so I don't think it will fit into 1 hour. We will have some overtime, maybe up to half an hour overtime. So if it's okay for you not having a break after this, then well, you can stay in. If you feel like a break, then just leave. Fukami said he will need up to 1.5 hours, so all the cache time we have. Now have fun with Fukami.
Hello, welcome to my presentation about Flash application security. I try to make this talk as entertaining as possible. I cut it down from 90 slides to 60 or so, but there's still a lot of stuff, and I try to make it as fast as possible. The agenda is just some words to introduce Flash and all the stuff, some definitions, because Flash has Flash introduces many new acronyms people are not used to, and I use them too, so I think you should know about them. Then I will talk about some basics on Flash and ActionScript, then about exploiting Flash and also using Flash for exploits, and then some notes on air security, which is still a beta, but coming end of the year. Some words about me. I for Sektion 1, a German web security company. And I deal with web security since late 90s, after I have been defaced and rooted. A couple of months ago I started a Flash security project, and I found it very strange that there was not so much security-related research in this field before. Only a couple of things regarding stuff. What was my motivation? The plugin itself is widely deployed. Nearly like every browser uses it, at least for looking stuff like YouTube. It means like YouTube is for Flash what Google or Google Maps was for JavaScript and Ajax, I think. So it's really widely deployed. When I started with Flash security stuff, at first it was like fun, fun to see how it works, fun to see all the security flaws and stuff, the first thing we were looking into were some bugs and design flaws which enabled you to have buffer overflows in it. One note to the beginning, I have a couple of slides from Stefano Di Paola's talk from Oberst May this year in Milano. He was actually the first person who deeply investigated Flash ability and Flash security models, and not only like certain parts of it. Some definitions. SWF stands for Walsh Map, Small Web Format, or Shortwave Flash. It's a Flash movie. The FLA, it's a source file for the proprietary IDE from Adobe, former Macromedia. FFV is Flash video used at most Flash-centered video servers. AS stands for ActionScript. Air for Adobe integrated time. I will talk about more later. Flex is basically Flash 9 plus ActionScript's GUI IDE and some interface libraries to make it easier to build applications, but nobody really uses it because it's quite ugly. MXML is interface markup language introduced by Macromedia a couple of years ago, where you could define your interface elements. Then FDS and Lifecycle are J2EE servers from Adobe to deliver multimedia content like audio and video stuff. RGMP or RTMP, it's a real-time messaging protocol. It enables you to have real-time messaging between server and clients. Yeah, and ABC stands for ActionScript code. The public research fits on 1.5 slides. So Flash is known since like the 90s or so, but the first thing which was published was from Ion Security about the getURL function, which permitted the use of JavaScript inside. The second one was this click-tag stuff a year later. Ahmed Klein, yeah, and then you see it's like 3 years there where not much happened in this field really, besides some advisories and buffer overflows. In 2006, my colleague Stefan Esser published a nice article about the possibility to circumvent cross-domain policies by using proxies and stuff. One thing which drew some attention was the demonstration I will have later do about anti-DNS pinning. DNS pinning is like DNS rebinding or DNS timeout with Flash 3, which enables you to file port scans, and then the talk of Stefano. Some basics. What is Flash? Flash is actually used as an acronym for many different things. On one hand, it's like an IDE, and it's a whole suite for doing multimedia applications, and it is like known since 10 years or so, and started as a graphic render. Adobe has released the SWF, definitions and stuff, but you are not allowed to build a renderer, but you're allowed to build generators for that. The reason for that was that they don't want to have more players than there, and most of the publishers I know, they like the idea of only having one player, but after this talk you will see that we really need to think about other possibilities to get Flash running. Flash is a mixture between like graphical objects or multimedia objects of every kind and ActionScript. ActionScript is for triggering the stuff and call function and stuff, and call external resources. Can be used standalone. You can like have a player which is running on your computer, or using it in HTML by a plugin. And the principles are very similar to Ajax applications, so we don't call full like interfaces and stuff, but only some data. Yeah, and it's often used for advertising stuff and for audio and video broadcasting. That's one example. Everyone knows it. What is Flex? I already mentioned. It's like an SDK and IDE. For building and deploying rich internet applications. It's Flash 9 with interface libraries, and as I said, it's ugly and no one really uses it in the production mode, but you can replace the interface libraries by your own. And the SDK itself will be open source. there's already a project called Tamarine, which is done by Adobe and the Macromedia Foundation to have ActionScript 3 as open source. What is AIR? AIR is a Adobe integrated runtime. The idea behind it is to have to give developers the ability to have desktop applications which work offline and have all their stuff supplied by web services. It's basically Apple's WebKit, the ActionScript VM from Tamarine, and SQLite. The SQLite component is mainly for storing all the stuff if AIR is working offline, and it's not final by now, and it still has a lot of flaws in my point of view. These are some examples how it can look like. It's like a browser, but with the possibility to don't have any of those usual interface elements you have. And I'm quite sure that end of the year it will burst. There are many big companies will roll out their AIR applications. Flash movies are timeline-based. It came from the time where Flash was only built inside the IDE, which is looking like a program for building movies and stuff. You really have a timeline, frames and stuff, and a stage where you put your objects. All the stuff in the movie and the movie itself is referenced by levels, and you can access a level by its level number, and you can always access level 0, which is the root element of everything, and which is also the global variable scope, which gets important later on. Just need to know it. The abilities of Flash are, it can load external data of nearly every kind. You can forge binary and HTTP requests, which is quite fancy if you want to do like CSF attacks or stuff like that, or simply let user do what you want with the applications. It natively plays audio and video data. It has its own codecs, which are quite weird sometimes, and which are proprietary. It also has the possibility to render XML, but not the full XML suite, but only like a couple of tags, but which is enough. Flash also has the possibility to execute JavaScript, and not when it's embedded into HTML, or like if HTML is embedded in Flash, or if a function is calling the URL, it's also possible to inject JavaScript. This is how the SWF interpreter works. You have the browser, it renders the page, all the communication between the page and the actual plugin is done via the Live Connect interface. Then you have the bytecode interpreter and the bytecode itself. So next thing is ActionScript. It's a scripting language which is also like 10 years old. It's now the latest editions are completely ECMA compliant. It's primarily used for Flash applications, but it can also be used for other stuff. But it's really like I don't know of much other things than Flash, which is using ActionScript by now. You can compile ActionScript itself to have SWF files if you want, and it was originally developed for doing 3D vector animations and text animations, but it's like it's a very, very powerful language by now. And ActionScript 3 will be open sourced. Some differences between ActionScript 3 and ActionScript 2 is that the main thing is that the bytecode is completely different. So all tools you can use for ActionScript 3 decompiling, ActionScript 2 decompiling don't work anymore for ActionScript 3, which is a bit bad. And the other very big difference is that ActionScript 3 has a lot of functions which are very interesting for attackers, stuff like sockets, stuff like file system access, which is not present for good reasons in JavaScript, for example, by now, or which were banned from JavaScript, but they are in ActionScript. But most applications you find in the web, they are still based on ActionScript 2. I would say like 80 to 90%. The security model of ActionScript changed a lot, and the security models of Flash too. And the basic thing is the same origin policy like in JavaScript, but it relies on DNS, as we all know. So there are a couple of things which completely break if you start DNS rebinding. Those security models control the interaction between Flash and its environment, means browser and other movies and other Flash stuff and other media content. And it also controls the way it is possible to access the stuff. One interesting thing which is not well known are shared objects. It's the local storage. It's quite similar to cookies, but the main difference is it's persistent, so there is no easy or normal way to delete shared objects when you close your browser. The other fancy thing is if you use, for example, those macOS, I don't know how it works on Linux or so, it's cross-browser. It means if you use your, or get a shared object from one website with a certain browser and you close your browser and you take another browser, go to this website, the shared object is the same for the same host because it stores at the same place in your file system. And there is no built-in expiration date or whatever, so they stay forever. And they are very often used as tracking cookies because no one really cares about those chat objects. Another funny thing is that chat objects they can not only store text data or XML, they can also store pointers and binary data and stuff. And 100K, it's enough to have fancy exploits stored on the client. But I will come to this later. Where you can just really have your payloads like where they belong to. Another thing which is very Flash specific called local connections. It means you can have two Flash movies which communicate with each other over local connection. The local connection means that the Flash movies communicate through the plugin and not through a connection between the movies itself. Just to show a short example on that. It's like these are two files from two domains, test1, test2, and I can send from one domain to another. Okay, not quite. Okay, but I will also show another thing by now. You can send JavaScript You can send HTML to the other movie, but the fancy thing is you can also do it that way. Right. In this case, I have a debug version of the browser, but it works. Okay. Usually local connections are only permitted to the same domain, but you can change it by allow domain policy. So the receiver needs to permit the connection from another host and say, okay, you are allowed from that domain, but if you do a star, you can access it from everywhere. Embedding Flash into HTML, there are two possibilities. You can call SWF directly from the browser or inside an iframe, like you can use an iframe to embed Flash or use embed an object text to do that, like in this example. So you can also have stuff like allow script access, which means that the movie itself can script back onto the website, which is called from. And there's also a possibility to load a Java VM during the load of the plugin or of the movie. Yeah, and you can also give some more variables in this way, but I will explain it later. The variable handling itself, the type checks are only applied during compile time. Afterwards, it's only type casts. The private methods are only checked during compile time. It means if you change them during runtime, they get not checked anymore. Every variable is an object. Yeah, and the scopes and the divisions are completely they're completely analog to ECMA standards, and most of the stuff in JavaScript, like parent prototype, are also exist in ActionScript. So it's not a big change for you if you want to do that. Input parameters. There are several ways to do that. One thing is to have parameters called like by a name and a value. You can also do that by providing a query, get arguments in the query, and also inside Flash movies by use load vars as a function. And the query strings and the Flash vars are equivalent, and it's important to understand some of the attacks later on. So the variable handling is pretty much the same like with PHP register globals. So you guys should know what it means. It means if you supply a variable via getArg and the variable was initialized, was not initialized in the movie, you can access it by the underlying root element. So in this example, this part of the code is vulnerable by underline root dot language you can call as language equals, and then you can inject your payload you want to have, or your domain or whatever. So people who know that from PHP and had fun with that will fun with that too. Some more about the sandbox security. So the sandboxes are meant to allow to share or separate the runtime environment. It means everything from the variables and objects to classes can be shared between two sandboxes, and you need to permit this by the system security allow domain. And you cannot share everything, but like static ActionScript functions and also other external movies which are permitted to using the same sandbox. So the cross-domain policy is pretty much the same like in JavaScript. So if you see the dom.tld, so you have like the access to stuff which has the same directory and the same stuff on the same domain, on the same protocol. The third one doesn't have the permission, it's the wrong protocol. This one don't have the permission because it's another port, and this one is another name. I can overwrite that, but that's the default cross-domain policy. The cross-domain policy can also be overwritten by a so-called cross-domain policy file, crossdomain.xml, which can be placed on the web server root. And you can allow access from other domains or other subdomains, and even from wildcards. You can like do a star in it, and so everyone can access it. A couple of months ago, nearly every site which used Flash had those star in it, so it meant that you can load their data from wherever you call it from and do whatever you want with it, because there was no security domain anymore. You can also load the security policy file from other domains, from other locations than default when you supply it inside the script. Flash player security from the client side is very weird in my point of view, because to apply global settings, you have to go to Adobe's website and have those Flash movie where you can set all your global domain settings. And you can, one thing is that a Flash movie which is called from, directly from the file system is not allowed to access data in the network, but you can change that by edit locations where files are allowed to do that. If you have like a single Flash file, you can just do that by clicking it, and then there's some settings tab where you can change that. There are a couple of major versions right now which are completely different in some ways, and that is, in my point of view, the explanation why Adobe has some major fuck-ups on security, because the Player version 9 is a version with a most limiting security models, but since the legacy stuff and Flashlight and so on, they are all like version 7 or version 6. So what they did, or what they do, is that if a player 9 loads a movie with a lower version, the lower security model applies. And that's mainly because that the applications are still usable and do not break if you do an upgrade to a newer version. Are there any questions by now? Okay. Some exploitation and some exploits using Flash. There are mainly like 3 kinds of attacks you can do with Flash. One is like a classical content scripting. I don't need to tell much about it, I think. And also overwriting the data which is used inside the Flash movie. I have some funny demonstrations on that. The other possibility is to load other Flash movies, cross-site flashing, and then like forging requests and file CSF. The other thing you can do, you can really use Flash for mass exploitation. There are a couple of examples, especially on MySpace, where people get exploited through the Flash plugin. And since there are still buffer overflows and still 0 days on that, the Flash player itself is like a threat for security. And if you use rebinding attacks, you can do a lot of nasty stuff. And I like to refer to Dan Kaminsky's talk on Saturday, where he's showing some stuff which is possible with DNS rebinding. So that's a part which I do not talk about. An example with XSS. It's ActionScript 3, ActionScript 2. There was this get URL function where you could call a URL in the target frame, and in this case you can inject JavaScript you like to inject, and there's also the possibility to do DOM injections with that. I had some very funny demonstrations on that yesterday evening. Yeah, so it's like, you know, the usual cross-site scripting stuff. Cross-site flashing allows you to change the variable handling inside the Flash movie. So you can, for example, have one movie loading another, and the loaded movie changes the whole variable flow inside the first movie. And yeah, if you have such unexpected browser to Flash communication, it can be very, very confusing, or like very dangerous, or like fun. Hold on. Here are a couple of free and open source Flash test and development tools. Flare, it's an ActionScript 2 decompiler, which decompiles Flash files to the ActionScript source. It's very, very nice. MTask, it's an ActionScript 2 compiler, which is, I don't know, 25 times faster than the Adobe one on ActionScript 2. Flash is a assembler, so you can get all frames and all the stuff out of it. SWF-Mill, it's a very, very nice tool for converting Flash to XML and vice versa. So if you need to supply like movies, pictures, fonts and stuff. The debugger version of the Flash plugin enables you to have a log file on all the messages and traces which are coming from the plugin, which is also very handy if you do research on that. The SEF tools is a tool collection of tools to combine stuff or cut them or just take out a single frame and stuff like that. And one thing I really, really like, it's Hacks. It's ActionScript 2, ActionScript 3 compiler. Where you can use ActionScript completely from command line, and can use the ActionScript source for whatever you want, like doing graphics, doing attacks, or whatever. Here's some examples how it looks like. Flare is just one shot. Compiling ActionScript with MTask, you can supply a version, so you can say I want to have a version 6 movie and not a version 8. Version 8 is the default. The header is like the part you need to have if you load a movie and have all those have all those length and frames and whatever. This is handling. It's not so fun, I think. You can just okay. Another fancy thing is AS function. It's a kind of pseudo protocol. The idea behind AS function is if you have HTML inside the Flash movie and you want to call an ActionScript function, you can do that, which is actually very, very useful in some cases. So you can, for example, yeah, if I just give some example here. No, don't do that here. Okay. So it means you can like have a function allow security domain, for example, and put a star in it because it's AS function and it is possible to call it statically. So that's quite useful if you find an attack. To use HTML in Flash, you have to provide an object of type HTML text, and you can say create text field. It's a function where you can like say how it should be applied. So in this case, you would supply the text variable through URL. This is an example of flawed code. So this one takes the get argument button text and displays it, so you can like inject some sort of image tag or whatever with like fancy ActionScript or JavaScript. And the way to do that, for example, with an A tag, looks like that. You can just directly do it as a link, or if you like do an href as function name get URL, for example, and then the arguments you want to have that. You can also have public and native static functions. That's the example, system security allow domain. So, using HTML in Flash. So that's an example from Stefano. In this example, the button text, you give an image source to that, but the problem is, the sandbox says no, it's not allowed to do that. So what you do is you take a piece of ActionScript, just do this get URL function in it, and since we know that allow script access exists since version 8, we just compile it with version 7. So mtask minus version 7, and it works. Other stuff which is funny, I just already showed you guys, like that's really funny. When I just recognize that image tags are able to call JavaScript that way, as for like, don't know what, then it still works. They know it since at least 5 years. Yeah. You can even do that with ActionScript functions too. Stefano called these functions PNDF, called potentially dangerous native functions, means functions which are able to load external data, and if they're not properly checked or Hallo? So there are quite some of those functions which permit more stuff. So every of those functions can use the ActionScript pseudo protocol or the AS function pseudo protocol. So if you have something like load movie root.murl and then this one, and you supply those function get JavaScript, it gets executed that way. Yeah. Another fancy thing is if you have flash video data, they can contain some metadata, and it's like AMF data. So it's like text inside those files. There are a couple of editors to change those, and there are even possibilities to do that with a proxy. So you can, usually you have something like on metadata on loading those things, and they get somehow read inside the Flash movie. And you can just change those to file cross-site scripting, for example. You have those types and names, and can just change it to another type and another value, and it gets a cross-site scripting too over metadata. The same is with like music players. There you have the event on MP3, I think. On ID3 means like the ID3 text can contain cross-site scripting code. One function where I had like 3 funny examples is to load XML files inside the Flash applications from another domain. And so an attacker needs to supply 2 things, the XML data and the cross-domain policy. And I have, as I said, I have 3 funny examples on that. Oops. First of all, okay, sorry. First of all, the original site of RTL, it's a quite big TV station here, and they have a Flash movie having those TV stuff, and you can do it that way that they have our camp featured. Yeah? Another example is like Nokia. So we have the possibility to have Nokia featuring OpenMoko. As you see, it's like it is Nokia, but and it really works actually. So you can say download, you get a software agreement with them, and then you come to the OpenMoko site. So it's basically this XML, what you just inject, and that's it. The last example on that is CNN vote delete. So the original site looks like that. It's like some voting, however. And we just have it our way. So my favorite is Dan. Okay, who else? It really works that way, so you can just really use those scripts say, okay, I vote for it. And it happens on the CNN domain, yeah? We are all at the, and you can, of course, file cross-site scripting doing that, yeah? So I have cross-site scripting on that domain too. And it's by that piece of action script compiled to Flash containing those JavaScript. What you can also do is you can change shared objects to read those stuff, but actually, I actually never thought in outside. I know that it works because I just tried that, but yeah, as I said, I never really saw that. Because no one really stores passwords in shared objects, or at least I've never seen that. Another possibility with Flash attacks is to backdooring Flash. It means that you have your backdoor compiled, and then compiling the backdoor and combining it with a file you want to backdoor. Also, yeah, for example, if someone supplies a Flash movie, or if you want to backdoor a Flash player, which works on some services. Also, YouTube was affected by such a possibility, but not anymore. So that it looks like a movie from YouTube, and you click on it, and you are backdoored. Yeah, and you can also if you are able to do that, you are also able to override all the logic which is inside the Flash file you have backdoored. Forging requests is, that's very well known, I think. You are able to have your request loaded, but one thing ActionScript doesn't permit since the last versions is that you can spoof the referrer, but Martin Jones came up with an idea to just put a request like that in the request header. It works sometimes, but the problem is that you have two referrers in the application, and some applications just ignore it. Some applications work with the last one supplied. So that's a possibility to do that. And they doesn't permit a couple of things. For example, I think trace they don't, and what was the other one? They can choose from different stuff. Okay. Yeah. Flash-based attack back channels. I think most of you already have heard of those JavaScript attack back channels like Beef or Backframe, where you can use the cross-site scripting to remote control a browser. That works with Flash too. In my point of view, it works much better because you can not only use HTTP but other protocols quite easily. You can use shared objects for persistent storage, even for storing the payloads on it, for later attacks or for later exploitation. Such a back channel is basically a client, a loader on client side, and a server which controls the behavior of the client. And I've not done a full thing, but like a couple of little parts for it. But one nice thing is that you can use, for example, hacks for having real-time, or like building new exploits in real time and just store them on the client, which is very nice. I mentioned that ActionScript 3 permits sockets in Flash. That's one thing which was removed in JavaScript a couple of years ago for good reasons, but they reintroduced it in that way. Many people already know this one, I think, but I will show it anyway. It's using DNS rebinding. They said any DNS pinning, but it's no pinning. The Flash movie doesn't pin DNS. It's a simple timeout, which is like 12 seconds or so. So in this case, I just have to wait for like 12 seconds or so, and then I get to see it's like the different domain. Seconds. And these are the ports, and they also get some data from it. And now it's in the log file, and they also supply like my listing. Yeah. The code. It's on the website there, Jumpers.net. I can show that, yeah. And where's my mouse? So it's like ActionScript stuff. And you should really look it on your own. Not, there are a couple of things which you have to do. You have to have a rebinding of a DNS so that you can map one name to a local IP address. Yeah, and so it is quite some effort in my point of view, because there's another way to do that. Because we found out that Adobe introduced an event called security error event, which was meant to be used for debugging socket servers. So it is throwing an error if a Flash movie will access or tries to access data which is not permitted to. So I think I have it already open. So this one works. It's live now if you want to try it your own. It's like a very simple one because it has some limitations, but it works that way. So the limitations are, for example, if you use or if you have a CAP service, it closes the connection if the wrong connect strings apply, so they are marked as closed. Or if you try that through a firewall or whatever, like to scan hosts in the internet, it doesn't work well because it's a timing thing. So if the request takes too long, it's open. It's marked as open, although it's not. So it doesn't work with Google, for example, but it does. Yeah, it's just for a quick scan, not for a big attack. So, but it's fun anyway. Yeah. Some questions by now? Sorry.
How many people are turning their Flash off right now?
I don't know. On my page, I think quite 90% use Flash without turning it off. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, many users go to, YouTube, YouPorn or whatever, yeah, where they have like Flash, so they don't say only permit Flash from this domain. They just say, okay, it's on, and they don't like to change it every time. It's just convenience. Yeah, the last part, it's about air security. The strange thing is that 10 years of web security leads to such a strange thing of software which is basically a web browser, we all know, and permit everything which is denied by the usual way you use browsers. For example, like file access or like sockets or whatever. And a couple of weeks ago, I found out about a way to really, or how that just works if you use HTML inside an Air application and you can file across that scripting, you can change not only data on the file system or opening sockets, you can also change the application itself during runtime, and that's very funny. So you can also change like the policy files, you can change the certificates and stuff like that. So at the moment it's a bit, it's very broken in my point of view, but they are still not done with all this thing, and there are still there's still stuff to come, but there's still some 0 days which are there, and we will see if they are still not still there at the final version. Also, the AMF parser, for some reasons, has completely other bugs than the Flash 9 parser, and I don't get why. Just a sort of investigation, don't have the time to do that by now. As I said, there is no ActionScript 2 decompiler, no 3 decompiler. In the moment, there's only Tamarine, which enables you to have some sort of ActionScript bytecode decompiler built on top of Tamarine. And this is the way it looks like. It's like really pseudocode. While, for example, ActionScript or decompiled stuff with where is it? Like this one. It's that's decompiled through Flare, so it's really ActionScript. You can recompile it to ActionScript, and it is a working application. But using ActionScript, an ActionScript 3 decompiler, you only have those bytecode stuff. So that's definitely one thing we need to have, like something which is more readable than that, or more useful. But for like basic stuff, it's really enough. So I'm nearly at the end of my talk, and it's like only 1 hour. Things to look for in the future. One thing is the buffer overflows in the servers and clients still, because there are a lot. The data handling between the various servers and clients and all the classes working with Flash and media data and stuff. But it's also fun, it's like breaking the sandbox. There are plenty of ways to do that. One is like this DNS rebinding, but there are also other possibilities, and it's really a matter of trying. It's very often the way that you try stuff with Flash and take a look to Flash security, and you try funny stuff, and it works very often. If you are interested in Flash security as a topic, however, we have set up a wiki where we have mainly like an overview over of articles explaining stuff, an overview of our software and libraries which are using Flash. But it's just started, so it's not too much to find there. So yeah, I hope that you guys will contribute if you start to look at this topic. So and in my slides I will provide them. There are a couple of links and resources just to have a first overview over all the stuff. So yeah, I'm done with that. Are there still questions? Or?
We have the full half of an hour of break. You might use this time to ask questions. Any questions?
In the port scan application that you showed, you are actually sending the information from the user that ran the Flash application back to the server.
In the first
and
example.
Saving it.
Yeah.
So that you can retrieve that information. So if you needed for your user to run Nmap on their own machine, it's essentially they just send you their vulnerabilities.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cool. Very cool.
Didn't you talk to Dan about that?
No.
You have to.